Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Arnis Luks here at the Crossroads, and I'd like to welcome two guests from Canada. Welcome, Helen.
Hello, Arnis.
No worries. Pleased to have you, Helen. What's the weather like?
It's around 0 degrees. We've
hmm
had some nice sunny days, so we get excited about the spring coming.
hmm
We've had some great days, actually, so it's quite nice.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's excellent. We're actually getting a little bit of autumn. It's cooling down, although at the moment it's warmed back up again to just under 30 or just over 30. But the weather's kind to us, and the early rains have actually caused a little bit of a flush. I was out in the paddocks in the country the other day, and there's a tinge of green to it, so that's a good thing for us. Welcome, Yves Potvin. Hello, Yves.
Hello. How are you today?
I'm well. How are you today?
I'm fine. I'm fine. You can ask me about the weather. It's different than Helen's.
That's
We
excellent.
live far away from each other.
Okay, and how is your weather? Is it much different?
Well, it was about 5 over today, and
Okay, yeah.
we got no snow whatsoever. But like Helen, we're feeling the spring. We can smell it. The
hmm
birds and the bees are starting to move around,
hmm
and it's nice.
Isn't that
It's
beautiful?
exciting.
Yeah, yeah. To me, the thing is that the seasons come and the seasons go, and the rains come and the rains go, and the earth is continuing to provide sustenance for us. The natural world is in order, and I think that that is really, really important for us to take into account that the natural world is in order. And while we're looking at the news headlines of the day, and they're talking about coronavirus, they're talking about economic meltdown, about isolation, self-isolation, to the point where people can no longer gather together. And in my view, this is part of a, if you like, design. It's essentially a medical martial law. That's what they're imposing on us. And I think I'll put it on the table that I think that it's malevolent. It's not. It has purpose, it has design behind it. And I'm prepared to accept any other thoughts in regard to it. If you've got different thoughts, I'd be certainly pleased to hear them. So, Helen, I'll give you the floor and go your hardest.
I find it hard to believe that it's not a malevolent plan, personally.
hmm
In Canada, as of this afternoon, 4 people have died from the coronavirus,
hmm
and they've all been residents of a senior center.
Yeah.
When you look at what the government has put out for information, they're not telling us how old the victims are.
hmm
The breakdown, like, well, if they wanted us to really make decisions based on facts, they could give us facts, and it could be an antidote to panic and fear.
hmm
And it seems that they want us in a state of panic and in fear.
hmm
Another aspect of this that I find fascinating is maybe in Australia or maybe around the entire world where we've been told to stockpile toilet paper. And I think they must be chuckling like crazy at us for such a stupid, like, people are doing it. People have been out um, getting
Stockpiling.
this,
hmm
yeah, stockpiling. Like, what if they had told us to stockpile shoelaces or shampoo and conditioner? Would people be doing the same thing? I think that it's remarkable that we're being treated with such disdain and we're taking it. And I
hmm
think it's a sign of how far we've fallen as a people,
Yeah.
as an independent people.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
are my initial thoughts
Yeah. No,
about
that's
this so-called pandemic.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a very, very lucid explanation, and I appreciate that candidness, Helen, because to me, I have exactly the same point of view, that the situation is, if you like, it's building up, it's amplifying. But I'm going to cut across before I give you the floor, Eve. I'm going to cut across just simply to our website because I've gone and made it my business to actually have a look at a particular book the other day, and it's here under De Jager, and it's actually a history of the of what the Chinese communists were doing as part of their actual taking over of that country, and they're fighting with the Japanese and Chiang Kai-shek, and their methods used in order to manipulate people. And of course, one of the principal methods is to have a whole swag of propaganda, and we're certainly seeing it with the coronavirus. Propaganda. The facts are that elderly people die every year from disease. They die from viruses. They die from pneumonia because their immune system is compromised. And here it is, we've got this huge push to lock us down, to stop movement, to stop meeting, to stop discussing things. And and to me, it's they're trying to use the situation to cause panic, because from the propaganda comes panic, and then finally the third phase is pillaging. It's actually to go in there and to steal either the resources or, if you like, our freedoms that we're used to, and to influence government outcomes of something like this, that we will lose our freedoms in a heartbeat over this perceived virus, this perceived threat to the whole world. Your thoughts, Eve?
Yeah, I was listening to watching a video yesterday, I believe, and actually there was all kinds of videos. Chinese people, the citizens of China, are trying to put out their news
Mm-hmm.
and what the government is trying to hide from the people.
Yeah.
These people are being pretty well murdered
Mm-hmm.
in China.
Mm-hmm.
They've taken them, and killing a person there is nothing. They couldn't care less
Mm-hmm.
about killing somebody, and the people have made video with a mask on their face, and they blacked out their eyes
Mm-hmm.
because they have face recognition there.
That's right.
They don't want, but they talk on the video, and they say this is what's been happening. They tell the truth about that this Chinese virus and how it came out, and what's happening. The hospitals are overloaded with people. There's people waiting in the street to be tested for the virus. Uh, I remember Y2K. I don't know, most of you would remember Y2K.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'm a lot older than you guys, but I remember Y2K, and I remember we were so. I mean, we weren't as. It wasn't as bad as now, but it was. They were warning people about stockpiling and getting things, in your house in order, and getting more food and stockpile it in the basement. And I remember buying a 5 gallon of kerosene
Mm-hmm.
for my heater. And 10 years later, I hadn't opened it. It was never open. As a matter of fact, it was rusting at the bottom, and it was leaking. So I gave it to somebody,
Yeah.
so they would use it. But I mean, what they're doing now is absolutely awful, because people are just in a. You just have to remember the movie 1984, George Orwell.
Yeah.
And it tells in there the media is completely putting phony news, false news, and the people are watching it with open eyes. Oh, what are we going to do? This is awful. We're all going to panic. And I mean, it's to a stage now. It's the government is pretty well ready to do martial law. If people start to go to the store and stealing things
Mm-hmm.
because you're out of toilet paper, I mean, we can see what can happen.
Yeah.
And I hear of people getting gun confiscation
Mm-hmm.
in the States. I mean, there's all kinds of little things that are happening there. People are getting tickets for nothing because they don't have the right curtains in their houses. So they're just putting the people on edge.
Yeah.
So we know what that's all about.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how I see it, Eve. I see it that it's deliberate, and they're attempting to impose medical martial law on us. I found it fascinating. I've read of the FEMA camps in America, and exactly the same, that the Federal Emergency Management, whatever facilities, hundreds and hundreds of these built under Barack Obama, and there it is that just for such a medical emergency, basically to isolate people, to remove anyone who might be thinking, anyone who might be discussing, and put them out of circulation, so that the mass of the population can be manipulated or herded into an area of control. The floor again, Helen. Your thoughts?
Well, we're being made to be fearful
Hmm.
We're isolating from one another. The entire day has been people canceling this and that for the
Hmm.
last several days.
Hmm.
Um, Cooler heads could prevail if we had information. Clearly, someone doesn't want us to have information
Hmm.
on a global level.
Hmm.
I've read that 0.6% of the affected population, people with coronavirus, die. That's a very small number.
Yeah.
We don't know that they're not all immune system compromised, and I suspect that they are.
Yeah.
Last year, when the flu season came up, we weren't herded into our homes.
Yeah.
Events weren't canceled,
Hmm.
churches weren't closed down, businesses weren't upended.
Yeah.
It, it's just hard not to see this um, as purely a medical situation.
Hmm.
We can imagine, I think we can imagine, I can imagine, we'll have restrictions. We already have restrictions on mobility and free assembly because everything's being canceled.
Yeah.
Will they rescind those measures? Will we be back to normal, or will it be like after 9/11 when so-called measures to ensure safety and security were put in place? They never were rescinded. They only
Yeah.
became more extreme in the
That's
last
right.
20 years.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly. Yeah.
to me, it feels like this. We're at a new plateau of totalitarian control. I don't think that's really very. That's not a fear mongering statement on my part. That's an observation I'm making.
Yeah.
I think we're at a new level of where things can really go downhill.
Yeah.
And much in contrast to what the freedoms that Douglas social credit would provide to
Hmm.
society and to the individual.
Yeah.
It's just in total contrast to that.
It is exactly right, Helen, and I think that's a very profound observation that it is totalitarianism coming at us, and something that they may never rescind. In fact, I think they have no intention of doing it. Now we've got to consider. You mentioned Douglas social credit, and yes, that is most people consider Douglas social credit in regard to financial adjustments, so that we're able to liquidate prices. But the thing is that social credit, Douglas social credit, is about freedom. It's about freedom of movement. It's about freedom of association. It's about the freedom to actually choose or refuse one thing at a time. Now, if you can't discuss, if you can't actually talk with your neighbour, you can't have free assembly, you can't debate the situation, then of course the those that control the situation, control the media especially, they certainly have the upper hand. And they don't want you to discuss what's going on. They don't want you to actually look at the science or do things to actually build your immune system up. I mean, as simple as saying, well, I'm going to make sure that I have an orange a day. I'm going to make sure that I have a clove of garlic a couple of times a week and things like that, so your immune system is there. Eat fresh vegetables. Drink clean water. These things are all important. About go for a daily walk. Dig in the garden. Eat your vegetables that you actually grow in the garden. These are all things about building up your immune system so that you're able to process any, if you like, biological threat. And so colds come and go. A virus comes
Yeah.
and go. And the fear and statistics that are produced every day by, I would label it as malevolent media, the mainstream media, is doing its darndest to herd us into a state of panic and fear. And I think to me, it makes good sense to consider long-term security, food being part of that, water being part of that. To me, they're fundamental. But long-term security is also about going across the fence and talking to your neighbour and just discussing things with your neighbour. To me, isolation, self-isolation, is that you're actually not discussing. You're in a state of fear and a silo. And what you've got to do is actually you've got to discuss these things with your neighbour. So I would suggest that you actually do exactly that. You can maintain a distance of a metre or two, but you can still discuss the situation with your neighbour and start to actually network and build up your little community. Those things that have lapsed over the years because we've tended to self-isolate with TVs or computers. Those things we need to consider, because I do note that in Venezuela, where the socialist government there, communist government there, started to put the screws on, and they reduced food supply, they reduced electricity, they reduced water, and there were two paths that the community could take. Some took the path of self-preservation at all costs. And the others took the part of, all right, I'll protect my base, but how is my neighbour going? Can we work together? And so they actually started to work as a team. And in that, that to me was rebuilding culture. It was rebuilding community. It was rebuilding the social credit, the Douglas social credit. Your thoughts, Yves?
Interesting that you're mentioning that. I have to mention the relationship also between this coronavirus and 5G.
Mm-hmm,
There is a relation there. There is a something that's happening with that too, and we're most of the world is ignoring right now the 5G.
mm-hmm,
Nobody's talking about 5G, but in the meantime, they're equipped. They're being we're being equipped with the 5G throughout all the countries.
mm-hmm.
There is towers being installed everywhere. Uh, but anyway, so that's the we have to put up with all these things, the lies that we have. Somebody said this morning, I think it was Alex Jones. The truth now is the new conspiracy theory. So when you tell the truth now, oh, it's a conspiracy theory,
Mm-hmm.
and they've blocked all the videos. Anybody that people that I know that talk a lot about the the new world order and the coronavirus and all that, and they know that it's a big a thing that they're planning for the future, the agenda 2030 and all that. All this is interconnected,
Yeah.
and some of these people that give their opinion, the actual opinion, they block them. They took them off of Facebook. They took them off of YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
You can still get on their website if you can. You can get to the website because they don't have access to the website right away. They can't connect, I guess, the website. But altogether, we have to look at how if this keeps going, and how are we going to keep going economically? How are we going to financially give or help each other?
Yeah.
So there is the local money system that can be implemented. A lot of people are talking. When I talk to them, they say, "Well, we're going to barter,"
Mm-hmm.
But it's easy to say barter, but it's not always the right answer. That's why they came out with a money system so that we can buy each other's things. But the dividend would be great. But right now they're not going to give us a dividend. They're not even going to give us a UBI, a universal basic income.
Mm-hmm.
But the local money system is something that maybe we should all promote a little bit, so that people will really think about it and say, you know what, we need to do this because I'm not getting income here. I'm not getting income there. Everybody's going out of work right now. In the
Yeah.
next 2 or 3 weeks,
Yeah.
everybody will be out of work. It seems.
Mm-hmm.
They still have some places where you can go to work, but a lot of people, like parents, have to find a place for their kids, for their babies, and all that. They don't have daycare centers are closed,
Mm-hmm.
so all these things. So we have to really think about the social credit ideas, which is one of them is the local money system, and I like the one that we have in one of our leaflets, the local money system by François de Cibantal.
Yeah.
And if I started a system, I would start a system like that
Yeah.
because it's for small villages and all that, but it would work really good in an environment where there's all kinds of trades and everything. So that would be something to really contemplate. I can't wait to get my next meeting going
Mm-hmm.
in Mississauga in 3 weeks. Problem is, are we gonna be able to have it? Maybe we won't be able to gather.
Yeah.
I'm not sure,
Yeah.
but I'm still going with it, and I've got some interesting topics to talk about that day.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's really important. That's an interesting observation about the potential for a local money system for communities to actually work together, and how they work that through might be as simple as just writing a chitty, and just saying, well, John Smith over there, he did whatever, and I write a chitty similar to a check, and you just sign it and you date it, and that way you can just transfer. You don't necessarily have to go through a big structure. You just need to record what's actually going on,
Yeah.
and your faithful dealings between people. That to me is most important. Now I've just done a quick search on the Pilgrim's website, and I'll just cut across to that just for the sake of the audience. I've just cut a search on a money system. And so you'll see the results there on the Michael Journal website for you to actually go there and have a look and see what the pilgrims, what people have thought through, what they have pre-thought through about local trading systems so that individuals acting in community can actually support each other in this difficult time. This to me is about building social credit. It's about building faithful dealings between people. Your thoughts, Helen?
Well, as you guys are talking, I'm thinking about the level of demoralization and humiliation that we've been subjected to.
Hmm.
This feels like, as I said, a new low, like a new opportunity for the powers that be to entrench the control mechanisms, and how that is in such sharp contrast to God's design for us to be free
Hmm.
and independent
Hmm.
and to participate in the common good.
Yep.
We seem to have governments and institutions that actively oppose the common good and the
Yep.
freedom and dignity of the person. And I think that what has happened is we have a level of mistrust in society that is entirely manufactured. Um, that's really to the detriment of any. Well, I hate to sound so discouraged, but it is very discouraging to look at the world that we live in, where people can be so manipulated. There doesn't seem to be um, on the street much critical analysis of what we're going through right now with this crisis. Let's call it a crisis
Hmm.
because it's being presented to us and proposed to be a crisis.
Yep.
Um, you know, what 100 years ago, high school students were studying Greek and learning Latin, and today college students are learning remedial English. Like we have just been so dumbed down as a population, and it's quite heartbreaking, and it
Hmm.
I think it renders us all pretty impotent in some ways to, sorry guys, to address these problems that
That's
we
fine.
see all around us.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's well put, and that's certainly a very lucid analysis of what is going on. The critical thinking is lacking, and we are not actually really analysing from a scientific perspective, if you like, what's actually going on, the real world of what's going on. And to me, it's most profound that we're not even thinking, in a sense, that the what is the purpose or function of government? What is its purpose? What is
Yes.
its legitimacy? Why is it there? Is it there to control us? Is it there just to pass more and more laws? And of course, that was answered. Jesus himself answered that when he said, "Render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, but unto God the things that are God's." When you place God at the forefront of your thinking, when you place freedom at the forefront of your desire to find expression in all that you do, you realize that government in its most rudimentary form should be limited to only those things that are absolutely necessary. Upholding
Yeah.
the law, not just manufacturing more and more and more and more laws, but upholding what is the common good, the common law that's acceptable. And the law at one stage was as simple as only do unto him which you'd have him do unto you. It was simple as two great commandments. You only needed two laws, two commandments. That's all it was. And here they are that, they've got reams and reams of books that would fill up football stadiums of laws. And this is the encroachment that government is having over us. And it is disproportionate. And we need to take stock of it and reconsider the direction that we've gone. Because I believe we are heading in the wrong direction. And if we are to do anything, we are to turn around and face the good. The good is God. Your thoughts, Eve?
I, we it is exasperating really because, but you know what, when work for when you live and you're controlled by a communist government,
Hmm.
socialist, communist, totalitarian government, then that's what you get.
Hmm.
Okay, there's no God there. There's no love. People are not being treated right. We have to bow down to a system that makes us uh, slaves, and we have to get up and go and say, no, this is the way it should be done.
Hmm.
This is, we've got to educate our people. We've been educating people for 80 years at the Michael Journal, and we try to educate them in a way that there is a solution to a better financial system.
Hmm.
And when I do my door to door, I'm like I said, I do business mostly. And when I go, nobody throws me out. They have to listen to. They have something that they're thinking about, and they listen to me. They don't always subscribe to our magazine, which I ask for subscription, but they always say, no, no, I'm going to read about it and I'm going to go into it. I'm going to go on the internet. You have a website? Yeah. And everybody is curious because they're all worried about the future. They're not sure. They'll do their work every day. They'll get their money the best they can. They get enough to eat. They get enough to pay their mortgage. But they have something that they're always wondering about. And you know what? They're all dreaming about freedom.
Hmm.
Bottom line is they're dreaming about a freedom. They want some leisure time
Yeah.
and not have to worry about their neighbor or their family. Or this is a time where uh, people are really getting into a situation of actual freedom.
Yeah.
If I want to be free, the first thing I need in my society is cash. If we lose that cash, if it becomes a cashless society, it'll be complete control of the state,
Hmm.
of the government,
Hmm.
and the bankers. They're going to control us really good, just like they're doing in India and China. The cash is not readily available there. The banks are not even accepting deposits in the countries of Europe and so on and so forth. So people have to bow down to this. Oh yeah, if I do this, people are scared to even say anything. Although there are some brave ones that will try to put as much news as they can through underground information sites or whatever. And I mean, look at these poor people in China. Hong Kong and China, they're fighting together. They have a revolution because they know what the totalitarian system does to you.
Yeah.
Okay, it puts you in terrible slavery, and we're going to have to really, really work hard to get the people to listen and find out a little bit of what's going on, and maybe out of that somebody will come up and lead the world to a better to that better system that should bow down to us.
Yeah, I think that's a profound comment, Yves. But the only query I'd have on that, in a sense, is that looking for leadership, if you look to someone to do it for you, it'll never happen because as soon as someone stands up, they'll get knocked off. But if you take the initiative yourself and you work with your community, this is, to me, is a time for people to actually regenerate. It's the time to actually orientate back to come back to community, because that, I believe, is where the answer lay. It lays in mutual love and cooperation. It lays in trust. It lays in working together as community. And if one thing you're given now by the lockdown, it is sufficient leisure. It is actual sufficient time to think. And that is what we can do now, is think. Think about what's actually going on and observe the real world. The real world is not in chaos. The perceived world, if you like, by the economist or the witch doctor, is one of complete chaos, the perceived world. But the real world is functioning perfectly. Your thoughts, Helen?
Well, I think the isolation is what will destroy us, and looking for the connections and the commonality is what will save us.
Hmm.
I was recently in the States for a wonderful pro-life conference, and all of the contacts we made, we had a table, an exhibitor's table from which we distributed Pilgrim's material on social credit. I had lots of great conversations with people. The life issues are related to the money issues, which are related to the control of government, which are related to the degradation that the oligarchs want to see us experience, the humiliation, the demoralization. And what was marvelous about being together with 300 like-minded people was like the sense of hope and the sense of possibility and the sense that a future is possible if we can restore, some sense of dignity for the human person, the knowledge that we are all in this together, that this is about our development, our personal and family and social development. We have all of those options, but we do need to be together. Like we can't be isolated and as demoralized as it's possible to get in these really difficult and troubled times.
Yeah, I see it as like childbirth, and I think that is the most beautiful illustration you've just done, Helen, of the potential that is before us, of people coming together, working together in a time of hope, And I think one of the titles on one of the articles I put in on Target was actually something new, a beginning of something new, better to replace what is. It is better, and that to me is the Douglas social credit vision. It is of replacing what is with something better, because obviously with the chaos that we're looking at, I believe that it's because the financial system has collapsed. It has collapsed. The fact that we're losing 30-40% of share prices, that they're dropping interest rates to zero, that they've already put in place the bail-in legislation so that savings will be confiscated. I mean, they're going to strip everyone's assets, all their incomes, all everything. There is design behind this. And so you've got to sort of come to grips with it and say, okay, our government is complicit. Those in leadership are complicit. They have not done the right thing. Now, on the basis that they're part of the problem and not part of the answer, then you've got to say, well, what is the answer and how do we get there? And the first thing is to restore community. It is to restore social cohesion. It is to talk to your neighbour, and if you can, help your neighbour. And from that basis, that mutual love and cooperation, to me, this is the core of culture. It is the core of civilization. It is what will hold us in this time of difficulty. We're at 32, nearly 33 minutes, Yves. Your closing comments, please.
Yeah, I just want to mention they have the elites and the bank, the international financiers have all the money in the world to contribute to the chaos. There's no question about that. So they can create war. They'll create money for that, no problem. Problem is, we have had in the past, in the history of especially the United States, but Canada was involved also. But you just have to look at someone like Benjamin Franklin. And when he had the colonial scripts that he did because there was no money left from the bankers in the colonies of the United States. So he created as many colonial scripts as was needed in the country. But after a couple of years, after he went back to England to report on his doing, they asked him, how come you're so prosperous there? Oh, he says, we create our own colonial scripts, and when we need money for this and that, we just print more and give it out. And the international bankers or the English bankers heard about that, and they say, no, you're not supposed to do that. You have to use the money that we gave you, the gold, the silver. We're going to send you enough, so you better cancel all those colonial scripts. And from then on, the United States went under a terrible poverty, and there was unemployment after just 1 year. The country was completely devastated. They went bankrupt almost. So it's not like we don't have the proof that it would work. Social credit would work. And we just have to educate. I keep saying educate, but we do have to educate, and our communities, we got to get together and concentrate on the education of people, because someday we're not going to have nothing. So we're going to have to come up with some kind of an answer. So if there is an education out there, a way that people, you know what I heard about the social credit and local money systems and all that. So maybe we should look at that.
Hmm.
So that's my final thought as far as social credit and maybe helping our communities a little bit.
No worries. Thank you for that, Eve. I would qualify what you said. Australia has had an experience too with its Commonwealth Bank as a people's bank, and they issued new loans. They issued almost debt-free money to the government in order to establish the infrastructure, the East-West Railway line, the Board of Works, which was sewer and water systems, our Commonwealth woolen mills, our Commonwealth oil refineries, Commonwealth shipping. They issued it. But the issue today is actually deeper than that, because that in a sense is like quantitative easing, and that is that the government spends up in order to get the community working again. The difference between that and Douglas social credit is that the new credits are issued in a controlled manner to the individual. They're issued to the individual, so the individual chooses to direct his funds as to what he chooses, as to what he sees fit. If you give all the power, the credit power, to the government, they become a greater totalitarian menace than what is existing. This is why Douglas social credit is so important, because it places power, responsibility, accountability at the feet of the individual. It decentralises government, which is the antithesis of, if you like, monopoly capitalism or communism, which is really the same thing. Your thoughts, closing comments, please, Helen.
Well, that's a really beautiful analysis, Arnis. I guess we're going to know about the outcome of this coronavirus scare in 5 or 6 weeks. Has it been a hoax to deepen government control?
Mm-hmm.
Has it been a real thing? We're going to find out soon enough. Will we bounce back? I pray that we do. I think a prayer is needed for people to wake up and get on track and be reminded of the great potential that we've been given in this life. You know, to live as we're designed, not as we are controlled.
Yeah, yeah, that is beautifully, beautifully put. What a vivid picture. Helen, Kmera, I have really enjoyed you coming on our forum today.
Thank you.
I think you've contributed and you've complemented these two rough edges that are sitting next to you. You've complemented, you've made us balanced in that, and I really, really appreciate you coming. Yves, Potvin, thank you so much. Your regular contributions are always most welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ernest.
See you.
See you then. Bye-bye.
Is that good night?
That's good night. That's good.